keeping you from 50.
Yeah, there you go. Or pacing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, ready?
Go for it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm with Anthony Bosworth. You're going to get to know him a little bit better. I wanted to spend a few minutes with him. He's been here on the ground helping Chris Ann Hull. That was a tremendous event, a 2-day session, her teaching the U.S. Constitution here. But Anthony Bosworth, it's been an honor to meet you. I've heard so much about you. I haven't had the opportunity to meet you in person, and I certainly wanted to introduce you to our listening audience. But tell us, I mean, you've been on these types of missions to restore our constitutional republic. You've been on these missions for a while now. This is nothing. This isn't your first rodeo, as they say, is it?
Definitely is
What
not.
what inspired you to come out here? Not just Chris Ann Hull, but you wanted to find out what's going on out here in Burns, right?
The search for truth.
Yeah,
there you go. Always the search for truth. You know, that's one thing that goes hand in hand is truth and liberty. You know, and we can't pursue liberty if we don't pursue the truth. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the big things that brought me here.
Before we get into this discussion, I want you to introduce yourself to our listening audience as to who you are. I definitely want you to give out a website so people can learn a little bit more about you. There's a lot of information online. You've been standing up for our Second Amendment constitutional rights for a long time now. When did you get started as an activist?
Well, I actually got started in the liberty movement probably 2005 is when I first got started. I returned home from Iraq. I deployed to Katrina as a soldier. And while I was patrolling the streets of Katrina as a soldier, I looked down and I realized that I had become something I did not like. That's when I realized that men with guns had to be held at a higher standard, especially men that were paid by the government. And one day I looked down and I realized I was one of them. I was a man in uniform with a gun, and I was committing atrocities on American soil, and that atrocity was being in uniform, patrolling American streets as a soldier. And I became ashamed of myself, and that was my awakening. That was my great awakening. And,
were you involved in gun confiscation at that time when you were in uniform?
I personally wasn't. I witnessed it. I seen it happen, and I seen the reasonings for it. And it's not really what the American people thought it was. The people weren't shooting at law enforcement and rescue helicopters. You got to realize they were trapped on their roofs. They were thirsty. They were hungry. They had dead family members next to them on these roofs, and helicopter after helicopter would fly over and not save them. And they were discharging firearms trying to get attention because they needed help. And that was literally all it took to control, you know, and go after the guns.
Right. So you had an awakening around 2005 or so, right? And you made a commitment to say, you know what, I swore an oath. I understand what that oath is now, and I'm going to uphold it.
I swore that day I would never catch myself on the wrong side again.
Wow, that's great. So it's been a long journey, a difficult journey, hasn't it? Because when you started this in 2005, you probably got looked at like you had 10 heads, didn't you?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Right?
I mean, it was a foreign language to everybody.
Right.
It really was.
Times have changed pretty dramatically. And my journey literally began with Bundy Ranch. It was my first field reporting thing. It was my very first. I had never left the studio before, but learning about our constitutional rights through the Bundy family, learning about our land rights, learning how to become an activist out in the field. A lot of things have happened in just the past couple of years. We've made great advances, haven't we?
Great advances. And really, we look at it as advances, and it's really not advances. It's actually, we're going back to our foundation.
Towards restoration.
Exactly. We're going back to what we were 200 years ago.
Right.
We're going back to that solid foundation. We're getting rid of all the perversion that we've allowed to overtake our government.
That's right. And your connection to Chris Ann Hull came through the Liberty Movement. You've been in contact with her for a while. I'm interested to hear about that.
Exactly.
I was pleased to see that you're connected to her. I didn't know until you arrived with her.
Well, it started out early on when she first started doing what she's doing and everything. I seen a little tiny video that and it was probably one of her very first that she placed on YouTube. And I listened to it, and I was astounded. I was shocked to find out that somebody else interpreted it the same way I did. And so I got in contact with her and her assistant, and we started talking. And through talking and everything, I decided that it would be great to bring her to the state of Washington. And we ended up getting her out there in the state of Washington, and she gave a couple classes out there to a couple political parties out there that we attended and everything. And from there, she's been back. I can't even count how many times. I mean, I know one time she did a Washington State tour for 30 days, just giving classes.
Did she really? Wow.
And I've been to so many of her classes. I've even repeated some of her classes. And every time I learn something new, it becomes clearer.
Mm-hmm.
Her message is so well put together, it cannot be argued with.
Mm-hmm. You brought up that you're teaching her classes. Actually, one thing that I was inspired to think about, because I have, believe it or not, before I shaved my head and got into radio originally, I was, Joe, corporate suit and tie. I was a public speaker. I was a consumer advocate, and I got inspired by listening to Chris Ann Hall and her recruiting people to join her in the Liberty Brigade. And I think there's a powerful message, and she can't do it all by herself. She can't save this country by herself.
That's a fact. I mean, she's become one of the Liberty leaders.
Yes.
She's waking people up. She's giving them she's bringing them back to the foundation they should have already been at.
Right.
And from there, you can use the foundation as a springboard to fight for your liberties. And remember, fighting for liberty isn't just about guns. It isn't just about coming and standing all the time. There's many ways to fight for liberty. It's action. You must do something.
Yes.
Besides talk.
And education.
Exactly.
And understanding how we were founded. I mean, I literally had a couple of epiphanies as to, this is how I understood. If I can convey this message, we could resolve any issues.
Exactly.
Peacefully,
I mean,
right?
Just that moment of clarity.
Yeah.
And that's what you get from the knowledge about liberty is clarity.
Yeah. And Anthony, I did want to spend this time with you to introduce you to our audience. I want to bring you on. I've had you on my show before.
Yes, you have.
And I appreciated that, but I appreciated making the connection with you here where it counts the most, out in the dirt, right? Because the Constitution does apply out in the dirt.
It does.
Contrary to what the BLM has told me before.
That's a fact.
But give out a website where people can stay in contact with you.
Well,
do you have a website or a way to stay in touch with you?
We do have a website.
Okay.
It's a group of website, and I just can't remember it right off the top of my head.
That's okay. That's all right. We're going to remain in contact with you. All right.
Liberty for All, 3%. We have Facebook page, Liberty for All, 3% Washington. We also have another branch of Liberty for All down in Arizona, and that's headed up by Cope Reynolds.
And if people want to know about your activism, they can go Google Anthony Bosworth in Washington State, and they'll have plenty of material to study up on you, right?
Yeah, Anthony Bosworth. I've got a Facebook page called Anthony Bosworth the Patriot, and that originally started out as my sheriff campaign page.
Oh, great.
And after I run for sheriff and changed that whole platform, we changed it to the Patriot because we didn't want to mislead people thinking that I was still running for sheriff.
Awesome. Pleasure to introduce you to our audience. I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Thanks
a lot. Yeah, thank you. Awesome. That's all we needed, man.
All right.
That's great. I'm glad we had that opportunity.